Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you if you are an entrepreneur. Yes, page, stage come together in entrepreneurship. And you may be going, I'm not an author. Well, you might have a contributory book out, one that you've put out a chapter into. You may have a solo book out. You may have a regular blog. But if you're an entrepreneur, I can guarantee you're on socials, aren't you? Well, what's that if it's not published work? Check that box. What about the stage thing? Oh, I can't do public speaking. I'm not like that. I'm not shy. I am shy, Can you have a one-on-one conversation with somebody? Then you can do a podcast. And yes, that's a stage. So if that fits your bill and you're going, one-on-one I can do, come talk to me. Let's have you on this podcast. Let's take you from page to stage. Right, that's a welcome to you guys. Now, I am excited to share with you this conversation with the lovely Debbie Rasmussen, who is presently situated in the US. Now, I know about that much about Debbie. We've had quite a few conversations, but she knows a whole lot more about herself than I do. So I'm going to pass this buck to you, Debbie. Give us some cliff notes as to who you are and how you came to be where you are now, please.
Okay, thank you. It's nice. Thanks for having me on, Wendy. I appreciate this very much. So I've been writing since I was 12, actually. That's when I started writing. I had an experience when President Kennedy was killed, and I was in the 7th grade. And somehow it just impacted me. And I had been writing poems and all that. So I wrote a story about that. And I actually didn't do anything with it except for read it to my friends. And then a couple of years later, my English teacher called me to her class and said that she had received a book report on a book she had never heard of. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And she told me that my friends had turned in a book report on that book that I wrote 2 years before. And she wanted to read it, and I was so embarrassed. I was like, no, I don't want you to read it. And I finally gave it to her, and she had me give it to her on a Friday. She came back on Monday. And this is what she told me. She said, if I don't see something in writing from you before I die, I'll be very disappointed. You're a very gifted writer. So that's the person that kind of set me to writing, because I wrote I wrote all things all the time, but I didn't do anything with them. So I continued to write.
Can I stop you for a second? For those of us who haven't grown up in Australia, in America, grade 7, how old would that make you?
I was 12.
12. Thank you. Thank you for
clarifying. I was 12 years old. Yeah.
Oh, and there you go. By the age of 14, you're being told you are a talented writer.
Yeah.
Do something with this.
I hadn't shared it even with my parents. I didn't share it with my family. I just put it away. But I kept writing. And then I got married when I graduated high school later. And I had taught dance since I was 17. So that was my focus. I raised 6 children, but I taught dance for 44 years. So that was my love. But all that time I was writing and just putting it in a file cabinet back in the old days when you had file cabinets. They don't do that anymore. I know. Anyway, and then in 2009, my mom became ill and I was living in California, and I came to Utah to take care of her, went to Utah, and I found I had time at night to write. So I pulled out one of my books and I sent in for some contests, and the one that I chose was Mystic Angel. That's the one that kind of came to the top. And I wrote that and published it, self-published in 2014. And it did really well, actually. I was just selling it to friends, and not family necessarily, but friends and word of mouth. And I went to a few events. And then in 2018, I met Rich Paul Evans, and I went to a couple of his retreats, and he said, you're a great writer, but you need to do something with those covers, make the books look more professional. So I didn't know.
Did you do your own covers before then?
Yeah, I did them on CreateSpace back in the day on Amazon, and I'd published it on Amazon. So I learned, I got professional help at that point and learned to do my covers, did brand new covers. And in 3 months' time, I launched the entire trilogy. I had 2 done, and he wanted me to have them done by September so I could go to Comicon. And I had them done, and that's where I launched. And it just took off after then. It really did.
Forgive me for interrupting. So your genre is sci-fi?
No, this is paranormal mystery.
Paranormal mystery. Thank you.
Yeah, paranormal mystery. Yeah, and it's funny because I've written so many different things. I like mystery and paranormal and adventure. And that's my favorite things to write. And so I also in 2014, I have 17 grandchildren. And so I decided to write them each a story and let them choose a superpower. So
Oh,
I put those together. They were invisible, they could run fast, all kinds of things. So I put a book together called Legend of the Crow with those stories. And that took off really well too. So I'm on my third book on that. It's an 8-book series. I'm on the third one. And now we have an island in Belize. We're going to Norway. We have so much fun in those books. So that's a little bit different genre, but it's still paranormal and it's adventure. So I have fun with that stuff.
so when you set out to write a book, have you already projected the entire series? Because I mean, if you say you're on book 3 of 8, you've already got the structure ready for the entire series. Is that right?
Sort of. So I don't outline. I literally write into the dark. I mean, some people call it pantser. I don't like that word, so I use write into the dark. But I know where I have to go, and there's 17 kids in those books. So I know it's going to take me about 8 books to get them finished. I know it's going to be at least that much. On my trilogy, Mystic Angel was only supposed to be 1 book. And it
Okay.
just kept getting longer and longer. And so I thought, okay, so I broke it in, ended up being a trilogy, and ended up being 3 books. So that was really fun. But that book the one I'm working on for that has had so much attention and people want the characters continue. So that's the book I'm going to be releasing right away.
Hey,
Yeah.
I know what you mean about you start writing and then it kind of expands and expands. My intention was to write 1 book.
Yep.
It's now 5.
Yeah, exactly.
And you go,
Once you've done 1 book, there's something about continuing, you know?
well, like you, it was a case of splitting it because there was too much information for 1 book. Now, the guy I have a publishing company with, we're setting up a series called Learn Before You Land, which are those sort of, I'll pick it up on one side of a transcontinental flight and I will have finished it by the time I get to the other end. In other words, 2.5, 3 hours max to read. Because unless you are in an elevated position in the aeroplane, you don't have Wi-Fi. So
Oh, yeah.
you're going to have something that you want to do if it's daylight. So what about reading a real book?
Yeah.
But one that's
Imagine
not
that.
too long, and that from this business perspective, it's one that you can learn something in that period. Not too
Exactly.
heavy either. Yeah. So I mean, we're living in the too long didn't read generation, aren't we?
You know, it's funny because audiobooks are so popular now too. Everybody wants audiobooks because you can do things but
Yes.
because of what I work with our Author Ready group, I walk people through the self-publishing process.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach that now, and I just taught a class in the fall on that. And then um there's a whole thing to self-publishing too. I mean, you know that you start and then there's just step, and then you get through it that and everybody says, okay, I'm done. Oh no, now you have to market. So
Oh
we think
yes.
we're finished. Marketing is the hard part. That's where it gets tough, but it's so fun. I mean, it really is.
I mean, the thing is that okay, audience, if this is totally new to you, or you're in the process of writing and think, now I've closed the book, it's been published. No, that is not where it finishes.
Not a
You
bit.
have to do the marketing, and the marketing, I would posit, includes talking about it, going from
Yes,
page to stage.
it
Probably
does.
not an ideal way of doing that.
Yep.
This is what we're doing now.
It's very true. It's very true. So I wrote a children's book called I Think My Grandma's a Witch, and
Okay.
it's done really well. And I have a niece in Tennessee who teaches 2nd grade, and she called me and asked me if I would read over Zoom that book to her class. And it went so well. I got the cutest thing. I got a thank you note from each child, and they want me to come again. And so that was really a good experience. But then I also went to a middle school a couple of times and spoke to kids that are in English or writers classes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fun to encourage those kids because they're around the age I was when I started to write.
Right.
And so I try to work with young authors. I'm working with 2 right now. One's 11 and one's 12, I think, 13 maybe. Just kind of help, just to encourage them, because I wish I'd have done something, but back when I was 12, self-publishing wasn't a thing.
No,
It didn't exist. No.
no, no. I mean, so
So,
much has changed, hasn't it? A number of the people that come to me and go, oh, I could never write a book. I'm dyslexic, and they have a lot
yeah.
of stories. And dyslexia is not a story per se. But I
No,
say to them, you got one of these? Then you can write a book. What
you
do you mean?
can.
You speak out your story. You record it. And then we've got enough apps these days that you can shove it through a transcriber, find a lovely ghostwriter / editor like yourself, and go, hello, here comes a book.
Yeah, it's true.
There is, quote, no excuse now for not getting your message out to the world.
There really isn't. And I remember when I first met Richard, he said, everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking at the time, well, everybody doesn't want to be a writer. But it's true, everybody has a story. It's very interesting. The more people you meet, they're like, I was going to talk about this. And there are a lot of, and the cool thing about that too, is every writer has an audience. There's so many people that you're going to have an audience no matter what you do. If you put together a decent book, it's just going to happen. So
That's right. And particularly in the nonfiction era, that genre, people say, well, why would people listen to me? I'm saying the same thing as lots of other people. And we go, well, are you? Because you have your own little twist on it. Only you have had your personal experience.
yep.
Underlining all of that, underscoring all of those experiences are common threads for the entire human race.
They are.
They may be
And
dressed
also,
up differently.
they are, but when you write from your own, you write from your, I mean, I do a lot of research, so I can put things in my books that I don't know, but you write from your own experiences mostly. We all draw from what, people that we see on the street or whatever. We all draw from that. And there's everywhere you look, there's a character.
Oh, isn't there?
Lots of characters out there.
Audience, if you don't already, may I suggest people watching as
a
really good source of material.
Yes,
now, again,
it is.
Most of us seem to be surgically attached to our phones these days, but I'm doing a lot of traveling.
Yes, you are.
I know. Yes. I sit in airport lounges and I watch. I sit in railway stations and I watch.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm actually very good at reading non-verbals, the stories I can pick up from just the watching. And you go,
Yes.
oh, I wonder what prompted that conversation.
No, it's true.
Start going off into a nice little make-believe world. Hello, you've got a story out of it.
Yeah, they're right. It's absolutely amusement parks. That's another place that's fun to watch people because everybody's they're not in a hurry. They're fun and they have a different kind of feeling. Yes. And it's fun to watch family. That's fun too. So there's fun to people watch. I agree.
Particularly if, like me, you're going on a roller coaster for the first time in your life and you're nearly 50 and because your friend has said you wanted to be stretched, didn't you? Yes. She knew that I had never, I mean, I don't do sort of the uppy downy. I rather like to keep my heart in my chest.
Yeah, it could be a little challenging.
But she said, come on. Oh no, that one's too small. You won't get the benefit. Oh, we're not doing that one. That one's way too big for you. Talk of Goldilocks, So we went for the middle-sized one. And the look on my face, because they take those photos.
They take the picture, yep.
Because it was going to be the one and only time I ever did it, I actually paid for the picture. And I put my hand up when it said, who is, for the first time, you can get a certificate. It was aimed at the kiddies, but I went, yeah, me too. I got the certificate. I'm a child at heart anyway.
Did you enjoy it? Was it fun?
I hated every minute of it.
No, absolutely. They don't even last that long either, but it seems like they last a long time, but they're not that long of rides.
Yeah.
But you can write about it now.
Well, I've certainly talked about it. I haven't actually used that as an example. Thank you, Debbie. That's brought that back up to the surface. I will be using that one. Thank you. Thank you.
An experience.
Oh, golly, wasn't it just?
Yeah, just a little.
So your writing, let's go back to your writing. So you started writing around 12.
Right.
Had you been writing before?
Yes, but you know what? I had kind of forgotten about it. My little sister is 4 years younger than me,
Mhm.
and her friend sent me a message on Facebook one day. She says, Debbie, do you remember when you used to write those little stories and read them to us when we'd sleep out? Because we always slept out back then. And I was like, I did? She says, yeah, you wrote little stories and you stapled them together. And then I remembered I used to get paper and write stories and staple them in these little books. I was just in elementary or, well, probably middle school. And then I read to them. And so I had been writing a long time. Plus, when I went back and looked, I had written a lot of poetry when I was younger too.
Mm.
I don't know. I just wrote. I was a way. I don't know why I started writing, honestly, because I love
Was
to
it a way,
read,
was it a
and
way of processing your thoughts?
I don't know. Well, it was when I wrote the book about President Kennedy.
Sure.
That's a it's funny because it's about a girl named Debbie who's 12 that got to go to the White House. I mean, I was 12.
Yeah, exactly.
And, she falls for a secret agent. I'm not a secret agent. What are they called? The protectors? I can't think what they're called. I
Or
guess they
bodyguards.
bodyguards, yeah, of the president. I mean, they're in their 20 or 30. Anyway, it was just such a it's just a young story, but it was fun. It was fun to write. And I think I might do something with that. I still have it.
Oh, you
And so
do?
people,
Oh,
yeah,
great.
people ask me all the time, why don't you put that into a book? But I don't know if I want to rewrite it or just put it exactly the way I did it.
Yeah.
I think it's better if I just put it the way I did it and share it with maybe, I mean, if I dare, I got to read it again.
What you could do, says she, offering
Yes.
unsolicited advice, you could actually use that as your initial thing, and then do another example of something when you first started your publishing
Yeah, that's
experience,
true. That's
and
true.
then where am I now?
That is true. I've thought of ways to use it a few times. Because I keep feeling like I should do something with that. You know how you just kind of feel this little prompting
Yes.
to do something that, because I work with so many young people
Well, that's what
that
I'm
might really
thinking.
help them.
You've
Yeah.
got the opportunity of saying, well, look, you may think as though you're starting small, but look where it leads.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Because how many books have you written now?
I've published 8 and I
Mhm.
have 2 more in the works. And I also I have another one. I created a children's dance program. It took me 25 years to create it over the 44 years I taught. And I
Mhm.
have all the information. And I keep feeling like I should put that into a book. It would help anybody that teaches children. That's what it was
Mm.
about. Up to 8 years, 18 months to 6 years old.
Mm.
So there's all these projects, but there's not enough time in the day.
Oh, well, there isn't, is there?
No,
Not
no.
if you're going to eat and live and breathe and do things as well.
I know. It's so true. I wish I could just write all the time, but I do, but not enough. So
No, one of our previous guests, she had an experience where she too, like yourself, is a ghostwriter, and she had somebody approach her and say, look, I've been given 30 days to live. Can we get my story written, please? Okay, well, that's a deadline and a half. So
yes,
they spent some very intense time together getting this
no
done.
doubt.
I think apparently he lasted another fortnight after publication, but that was it. So
Wow.
inevitably there was a deep grieving experience for this lady, because she had really connected on a very deep level.
Right. You definitely do.
Then came the holiday season, and it's the 1st of January, and she's realizing that the 3rd week in January is when her script is due at the publishers. She hadn't started it.
Oh dear.
3 weeks. So what she did was she said to the family, I'm going into my writing cave. You can
Yeah.
come out, you can get me out for food and fire, and that's it. Everything else, sort out yourselves.
No, it's true. You have to do that.
3 weeks flat, she got the whole thing done.
And you can do it too. It's very true. I had so my second book in the Crow, Legend of the Crow is called Imminence.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized I had a deadline because I was going to go to Salt Lake and do a launch. And I realized I was behind. I mean, just getting it done. And I'd been over to most of it was, I had to finish it. So I literally started writing. I remember I called into work. I was working at that time. So I can't come to work today. And I was just telling my grandson this morning, 24 hours. I did not stop writing. And I got it done. And it was done, but it was really funny because I published it. And then one of my beta readers called me, she goes, "Did you know that half of chapter 13 is missing?" I'm like, "What?" So I had to republish it. But I had somehow left out. But the good thing is I only sold 30 copies. I just gave them all a new copy. But I got the story out and done. It's just that when I guess I was in a hurry. I don't know how we missed it. I don't know. But anyway, those things happen. But
Yes. And that's the joy of doing the self-publishing or having a discrete publisher,
it is.
in that you still have the original manuscript.
Yep, you still have control. Do you know something else? Speaking of locking yourself in, so when I was raising my kids, because my kids are I had them all in 10 years, so they're less than 2 years apart.
Oh,
So they were all little, and I'd put them all to bed, and then I would go to bed for an hour. And I did this teaching dance too, but then I would get up and write because my best writing still is in the middle of the night. And I think it's because it's very quiet. Nobody's going to call me. I don't feel pressure to do anything. It's just me, and I could just write. So to this day, and I can't do it all the time right now because I do a lot of editing, so I have to do that during the day. But if I can get writing, take a nap and start writing, I love that because my creative, for some reason, that's when my stories and my characters come alive. I don't know why, but it's really true.
The thing, if you know yourself, you know when is the best time to work. I mean, getting back to this lady, she realized that if she sets a deadline, she can do anything she wants. It's this, oh, a bit of this and a bit of that, and time blocking for this and time blocking for that. No, that's not how she works. And I've realized that's the same for me.
Is it?
Yeah. So if I spend an entire day doing one particular task, like getting social media out for the whole week, then it flows so much more easily than
Yeah.
oh, I've got to get today's done. Oh, I've got to get to today's done, and then shifting onto other things. So I think, yes, if you know how best you work, when's your flow, how is your flow, what time is your flow,
Yep, it's true.
then yeah, go to it.
We hear all these ideas, like you said, of blocking time. I'm going to do this for 45 minutes, and I cannot function that way. I don't, because I get into the creative mode or something, and I can't just stop
Yes.
and switch gears. I agree with you 100%. I can't function that way. We get taught that all the time, and that's just not the way my brain works. I don't know.
But for me, the switch lag, whatever the technical term is, between being able to focus on, right, well, I've been really in the flow. I've gone onto this, and then the alarm's gone off, and I go, huh, right, okay, now what am I supposed to be doing?
I know.
It takes 20 minutes of the next 45-minute time block to go, oh, I'm in the flow. And then
To get your head. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
and then suddenly you're telling me to change again. No.
I know. I know a lot of friends that work like that, but that's not me.
That's the
So,
point, isn't it? You do you, I'm going to do me.
yep,
Yeah,
the way we have to do it. Exactly.
beautiful, beautiful. So we've heard about your writing journey. Tell us about your speaking journey.
Well, as far as my books go, I haven't done as much speaking except for, well, I just did an event up in Utah just a while ago. We spoke to a group. I think we had almost 200 people there. And there were Rick set it up for, well, they invited us to go present there, a bunch of authors. So I'm very comfortable doing that. I love talking about writing and self-publishing and the journey. I love that. And I love speaking at schools. I usually get myself out doing it more. It's been, and actually, I think part of it is just reaching out and asking for the opportunities. I think I'm learning that that's something I do get invited, but not enough. When I was invited to teach self-publishing, that was a very comfortable thing to do, and I loved it. So, I mean, part of it's because I taught my whole life, I've taught dance my whole life, so I'm
Dance,
used to
yes.
being in front of people
Yes.
and audiences and that kind of thing. And I'm more comfortable talking about writing now because it's more fun. It makes more sense when you have things to show that you've accomplished and they can see that. So it does help.
Yeah, absolutely. So has most of your speaking been done in person?
Yes, the only one I've done that Zoom was the one with the kids in Tennessee.
Sure.
Other than that, I've always been in person at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because there are lots, and the audience, if you don't already know this, there are lots of opportunities for virtual stages.
That's what I'm saying. I think podcast is basically what I need to just reach out to find out. There's people that want to interview you all the time for writers and things. And I haven't spent my time on that, but I think it's probably time that I did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the podcasts, absolutely, but there are also virtual summits where
Oh,
you can put yourself onto a speaker directory, and audience, if this is of interest to you, message me below and I can fit you in, because I know
didn't
of
know
at
that.
least 2 speaker directories that are free listed. So
Are they?
what happens then is event managers jump onto these directories and go, I'm putting on an event about X. Keyword searches on the directories, and
Right.
Debbie comes up as being the person to talk to about self-publishing.
So I didn't know those things existed.
When it comes to podcasts, there are podcast directories. There's a few websites that actually say, list who you are, what your topic is, who your ideal audience is, what is the value you can bring to that audience, because it has to be a value add.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
And then with podcasts, I mean, particularly if you've got lots of friends in the podcasting world, they go, oh, I need a guest, would you come talk? And I go, yeah, but who is your audience?
Yeah, that's
If they're
true.
farmers, it's
No.
not my field of favor, if you will, every pun intended. My point is that you be selective.
Yes, of
And
course.
that's where, again, there are podcast directories, there are Facebook groups that you can say, I'm a speaker or I'm a podcaster. And you can do a little bit of speed dating on that front.
I actually would like to do more of that. So thank you. I just need to start looking into it. It's been on my radar. It's just not something, especially since I talked to you the first time, it's been on my mind since. So
yeah. Well,
get with
audience, DM me below in the comments and let's talk. And Debbie and I will have a conversation offline.
Good idea.
Okay. So your speaking journey. So because I mean you're teaching, absolutely that's a speaking opportunity. And it has a very different discrete skill set from, say, doing a keynote.
Oh
And
yeah.
also you're reading from stage. Now that is an art in itself. Because so many times when I've seen authors reading from stage, they've done the Muppet style.
I know.
No, you've an audience out there. Talk to
I know, that's so
them.
true.
Yeah. So there are subtle differences in the way we talk depending on the stage and
Right.
the audience. So yeah, love it. Okay, so we've talked about your writing journey. We've talked about your speaking journey. Tell us about this wonderful book that by the time this airs will be published.
Okay, this is a fun book because my other books, it follows my original trilogy. So it's Mystic Passage is the name of it. It's the second Mystic trilogy. And it's funny because I was going to write the book and then I was looking things up and I was going to do book 4. Well, you don't do book 4 in a trilogy, obviously.
Not unless your name is Douglas Adams.
Right.
Do you
So
know Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to
no.
the Galaxy?
Oh, yes,
5 books in his trilogy.
in his trilogy. So I thought, well, there's enough characters in here that I could easily write 3 more books. So this is called Mystic Passage. And what happens at the end of Mystic Mansion? So it's Mystic Angel, Mystic Lake, Mystic Mansion.
Right.
The mansion is where all the paranormal stuff happens, is inside this mansion that these kids, Aspen and Noah's grandparents owned. And it's in Tennessee. And they after all this happens and they find all these people, I can't tell you at the end of that book because it's huge. I mean, it's a spoiler, but anyway.
No spoiler alerts.
No, because only one person guessed the end of the book. And she's one of my beta readers, but she says, I figured that out, but she's the only person. So it did its magic. Anyway, so they go to California. Yeah, exactly. They go to California for a trip, and then she starts to feel that it's time to go back home. I mean, there's with their family. One thing I like about these books, and I've been told so many times, is these kids work with their parents too. So they're 16 and 17. Their parents it doesn't start out that way, but then their parents become very involved and they meet these kids back there whose dad is a school teacher, their school teacher. So he's heavily involved because he's a history buff. And so it's really fun. They have to find these ancestors from 50 years ago are trying to get a hold of them. There's 200 of them they're trying to let somebody know what happened to them because nobody has the truth. And so we finally figured that out by the end of the book. So now what's happened, we're going back, and the mansion does things it fixes itself, it can rebuild itself, and it's calling them back because there's a whole nother thing that's got to happen. And my cover designer is in Greece. And I sent her the message that what I wanted, and she sent me back the coolest cover. And she actually, because of my other book, she put spirits coming out of the passage towards the front of the cover. It's so cool. Turned out so good. So that story is going to carry on. And there's so many characters. In fact, I got a letter from, or not a letter, duh, a text, no letter.
The modern version of a letter,
Yeah,
yes.
kind of. From a friend of mine in Salt Lake, and she said, well, she's not a close friend, but she goes, I can't believe all the places you could go with all these characters. There are a lot of characters in those books. There's 4 main characters, but there's all kinds of things that come in, twists and turns. So I'm excited to get that out there because, and everybody I've told they're excited about it too, because it's picking up with Aspen and Noah and Gavin and Kieran. Those 4 is picking up with them. Because Gavin and Kieran are brother and sister too, but they're not really. They adopted Kieran, and Gavin, that's his stepdad. Because anyway, so it's just fun. They're really fun.
With your character progressions and things, do you have some form of way of noting what you said in previous books so that you can carry on a thread?
Yes, because when I did Mystic Mansion, I had so many loose ends to tie together.
Yeah.
I really, that was hard work because there was, it has to come together.
Yes.
So I have a journal on each book. I keep a separate journal, and it's a handwritten journal, so I can make notes. They're just thin like that. But I have a complete genealogy of the family because I have to remember this guy was this age, and oh, that's going to work because you know what I mean? So you have to write it down.
Because if you don't remember it, somebody else will.
Exactly. Oh, no kidding. And I didn't start out that way. I just remember going, oh my gosh, I've got to write this down. So that's why I started to keep a journal on each book, and it's really saved me because I didn't go back through them and make sure I pick up all the pieces because there's a lot I have to bring back into this one. In fact, I had to read my whole trilogy again before I started writing it.
Yes.
Just to make sure that I was on
sure
task.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, because they were published in 2019. So
here's a very quick share. Where are we? There.
Whoops.
Briefly.
There it is.
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes. Yep.
Post-it notes. Because my book is not, it's non-fiction. I'm not having characters as such, but I have got threads that I need to tie in. And the editor feedback was, needs some work.
Yeah.
You can bring in, you can condense 2 chapters into one as long as you tell the story around your points. At the moment, it's reading like a shopping list.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's when I went through and went, okay, 1 point per post-it. How am I going to include it? And the thing I love with the post-its is you can physically move them around.
Move them around. Yep.
So, I mean, they're all on a page there because they were on the wall. Actually, they were on the desk in my previous place. And audience, if you haven't already guessed, I move around quite a lot. So in order to move from my last place in Kuala Lumpur to where I am now in Penang, I had to stick them all on one page so I could close the book and pop them
close
in
it. Yes.
Yeah.
But isn't it fun trying to tie all those ends together? And another thing that I found, and maybe I don't know if you experienced this or not, but in all 3 of my books, the trilogy books, like one night I got up just in the middle of the night to go to the restroom. I came back and I'm like, who is Patrice? This name just came to my mind. And I went to bed the next morning. I got up and thought, you know, that she is a main character. I mean, she became a very important character through the entire trilogy. She didn't even exist when I started. I mean, she's somewhere in the middle of the book. She floated in. Yep. I had it happen with both the other books too. Just this character, and they just come to you. I don't know how people ask me, how does that work? I don't know. I don't. I mean,
I don't need to.
No,
just being open to it. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Just be open to it and let them come. And my daughter told me one time, Mom doesn't need any friends because she has all of her imaginary friends that live with her. I guess it's kind of true, but I need friends.
We do need the physical friends, which is actually where one of the books has come from. because my books, forgive me for doing a little bit of a plug here.
No, please.
The first book that's now morphed into 5, the final book in the series, which will come out before some of the others, is around how do I, as a solo female traveler, curate and maintain relationships.
Yes.
When I'm literally buzzing all around the world. So that book is now the priority once I finish this one, to get it out for the 2nd of September.
Oh, okay.
The reason I have that date in mind is that is my 60th birthday. And I want to have that as I get by with an awful lot of help from my friends.
Yes. But I've wondered about that. Not so much your connections is because it is harder to maintain, but we're so fortunate that we have this kind of thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
I mean, it's because I thought about this. People hate Facebook. I love Facebook because I have found so many of my friends from school and just in, when to dance, all those different states I've lived in, they're still there. And I love connecting with them. I think it's so much fun. So we're fortunate.
We indeed are. And I mean, where are we? It's Wednesday today as I'm talking to you. No, it's not. It's Thursday for me. It's Wednesday.
I was going to say it's probably not. It's probably Thursday.
This time last week, I was in Kuala Lumpur and I met him with a lady from Perth who was over visiting her parents. And I hadn't seen her for a while. And then a lady from Toowoomba in Queensland, which is diagonally opposite side of the country to where I used to live in Perth. She was over in KL, so I spent some time with her.
See? There you go.
It's really good to see them. And I actually then had a Zoom call with a lady that I knew in Perth who has now moved to Queensland. And we worked out that we hadn't actually spoken for over 5 years. And whilst I hadn't seen her physically, we've managed to maintain contact. And so it really is very precious when you physically can poke some, or rather hug them. Let's not poke.
Yeah, hug them. Exactly. But isn't it fun? Because when you see those people, it's like you never were apart.
Yes.
Those kind of friends. Yeah. It's really important.
I mean, the podcast that got released today, but the one that has literally went out 3 hours ago, that was with a gentleman that is still a mentor of mine. I was coaching with him a few years ago, and I proofread his book that came out in 2018. So we've known each other a long time. When I physically met him in, where was it, Phoenix? This guy's 6'4". He's a real bear of a guy, and he literally picked me up and swirled me around because I'm only 5'3 3/4, and that 3/4 is very important. Very important.
It is very important.
My height. But yes, it's that literal physical connection. We can have so much of an energetic connection through a camera.
Yeah, we can.
There's nothing to beat that.
No, in fact, I was doing a book signing in Salt Lake a couple of years ago, and there's these young guys that I had met through our church in Salt Lake, and they're all over the United States. Mm-hmm. And I looked up and I thought, that looks like Rob. And they're my kids' age, and here they come walking towards me, and I was like, I could not believe it. I've not seen those kids. Last time I saw them was in California, probably before 2000. But I knew him immediately, and they saw my post on Facebook, and they just moved to Utah, and they saw it, and I couldn't believe it. I was just blown away by that. So you're right. It was so fun to see him in person.
Yeah. So back to where we were going.
Yes.
Your book has been published by the time this is.
Yes, it has been published. That's right.
So, audience, we will make sure that the link to Debbie's book is in the show notes. So do go and check it out. And there will also be, Debbie, your author page on Amazon will also presumably show up then, because once you look on something on Amazon, it says, oh, and by this author there are.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
All of these things. So you can go and check out all her other work.
Yep. That'd be nice. They're all there.
Yes.
This will be there too. So.
Fantastic.
I would recommend you read the first trilogy so that you're up to date with this book.
Oh yes, don't start launching in with the characters.
The fourth. Yeah, because you're going to want to. Each book kind of stands alone. I mean, it does, but it's better if you know the story coming through because they grow with the characters. It's been 2 years since they've started it. They've grown.
Are your books getting fatter like Harry Potter's?
Oh my gosh. So the first one, I didn't know that until I published the third one and I pat them on a shelf and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this thick, and then this thick. It's so true. I didn't know I did that. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I experienced it with Diana Gabaldon. I think we had this conversation, excuse me. I think we had this conversation before. I first started reading her stuff when it was about that fat.
Yep.
And then the last few have got progressively fatter. And because I'm traveling so much, I literally cannot afford the weight on
I know, to carry them. Yep.
So Kindle has to be the thing now, even although I love the visceral feeling of the pages.
I do too.
And do you know what? I also have each book has its own scent, its own aroma.
There's something about an actual book. And I think a lot of that is if you started reading as a child. I don't know, for some reason, my brother and sisters thought I was crazy. I always asked for books for Christmas and my birthday. I couldn't wait to get books. But everybody doesn't feel that way. But I have lots of friends that read on Kindle. I don't like to, and I think it's because unless I'm traveling, because I spend so much time on a computer all the time, that I like to actually hold the book. Audiobooks I do like though when I'm driving. I do like that. So
yeah. I listen to books while I'm doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Food
Me
prep,
too.
all that sort of stuff, because I love to be immersed in something other than.
Do you know something funny though? I was driving from Page, Arizona down to Zions National Park at a retreat. And I always listen to a book or something, a podcast when I'm driving. Well, this day I didn't. I don't know why. And I came out of Page. Now I've driven that road. I can't tell you how many times. And I thought, where am I? I don't remember any of this. No kidding. Because I was listening instead of looking. And I thought, this is beautiful. I found that kind of funny that I'd on that road so many times. And it's not that I didn't see it. It just didn't register.
Yes.
So sometimes I just like to drive and just look, just observe. Sometimes we need quiet.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm aware of the time, Debbie. Tell us a bit how you embody your words when you take them from page to stage.
Well, I haven't done as much of that as I'd like to do, but the one thing that I do know, for the most part, I do know how to engage an audience. I like to bring them into whatever I'm talking about, and I'm not, for some reason that works for me. And so I connect pretty well with people when they're in the audience and then we end up talking afterwards or whatever. But I think for me, for example, when I taught that class, I'd never done a self-publishing class. And I just gave them these little things. I handed out this little thing to them and I just said, this is going to be part of it. And we opened them and they weren't what I thought they were. Long story short, I bought little pumpkins and I didn't realize they were salt and pepper shakers. So somebody had a salt shaker. So I'm like, oh my gosh, because I put them together that afternoon when I got to Salt Lake. Anyway, but it was an icebreaker, almost unintentionally, and we just had fun. And I like to be able to ask questions. I mean, answer questions. I like people to ask questions because it carries I really do. And I love it when they ask about my books and I can, if we're talking about that subject and we can talk about that and they have questions. There's lots of questions about when you write a story. There's especially if they've read it, they want answers about things. So I don't know that I've done a lot of speaking, but not necessarily about my books, except for the last little while. So I'd like to be able to do more of that. But I do typically can engage an audience pretty well, I think. Now watch the next
storyteller.
Yeah.
And therefore
good point.
You know how to engage people. Love it. Brilliant. As we're winding up, Debbie, have you got any final words of wisdom for our audience?
You know what? I think the main thing is we all have this imposter syndrome that we can't do something, and so we don't. Yeah. And it's like these little kids they're not kids, they're teenagers that I'm working with. I tell them just write. I've got a friend that's been writing a book since 2019, and I think it's been done for a while, but we can re-edit until we just edit ourselves into a corner.
Yes.
So just write your book. And then I just talked to a girl the other day. She wanted to know about this. And I said, you know what? Don't worry about all that. Just put your story write it down, and then once it's done, go back and go through it. So if you want to write.
Yeah.
I always tell people that unless you publish something, it's just words on a paper. Because nobody else reads it, just you.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean anything. So.
Exactly. And it's you holding your, in effect, you're denying your audience by holding it in, aren't you?
Well, and you're desiring yourself of being the fun of doing it. I guess that's the best word,
Yeah,
the fun, because it is fun.
it
But
is.
I just encourage people just write. And honestly, you can outline and draw pictures until the cows come home and it won't get written. Just write.
Yeah. Well, certainly when I've been working with authors, I've recommended that they just do a data dump. Either
Yes,
type
exactly.
preferably handwrite, so that
Exactly.
it just comes out. Don't censor. Don't worry about full stops, capital letters, or anything. Just get it out. Then you can review it.
Yep. Once you get it on paper, then you go back and you can do all the little changes and all the things you want to do. But until then, nothing's going to happen with it. So
exactly.
yeah.
Oh, so much joyful information there. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Really loved our conversation as always.
I have too.
But this time we've done it on camera.
Yes, we have. Be fun to talk to you again.
And I'm sure we will. I'm sure. Well, we definitely need a conversation about getting you on some directories.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, for sure.
And now, though, audience, thank you so much, Debbie, for sharing your From Page to Stage.
Thank you. Thanks, Wendy, for having me.
And now, bye from us.
Bye. See ya.